Hi, I'm Terry Kimball, President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber, and I'm very excited to welcome Katrina Schaffner. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you are running for Congressional District number 5. So let's talk a little bit about, because stepping in to run for a congressional seat, that's a big deal. Why are you running?
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's really exciting. But ultimately, I am running to challenge a system that benefits the top and has left the rest behind. I think it's past time that we hold corporations accountable, make sure everyone's paying their fair share so we can actually invest in domestic policy here at home. I think it's really important that we have turnover in Congress so that we have fresh perspectives. And I think having more working class representation is desperately needed. Most representatives in Congress right now are millionaires, and I think they have this blind spot and miss opportunities when they're writing legislation to understand how it's actually impacting everyday life.
Great. Thank you for that input. So what do you think in the next several years, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the district or Arizona as a whole?
Oh, that's a good question. I think right now we're really focused on building those bridges. As you know, there's a lot of division right now across the political spectrum, and it's really important to kind of stay focused on the work and making sure that we're working together, working within our own party and across the aisle so we can actually move our country forward. I think a lot of the issues that we're facing here in Arizona and in District 5 are the same things that folks are facing across the country, right? We have a challenge with affordable housing. We're seeing, folks go into a bankruptcy because of medical debt. This is what's hitting us here in Arizona and just everyday families all over this country. And it's something we really need to tackle. And even though we've invested in policies that have made progress, we still have a lot of work to do.
So the Chandler Chamber here represents about 172,000 employees here in Chandler, which is a large business community. So if elected, how will you foster a positive working relationship with yourself and the office and the Chandler Chamber?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's something that I really do want to prioritize when elected because, I think that we're missing those relationships with our congressional offices. Right now, the incumbent, their local office is not very functional, and people, when they call, they don't really get through to anybody. I really want to change that and invest resources in a local office so that we can better connect with our communities, whether it's with small business owners, whether it's with everyday voters. I think we need to start building those relationships and encourage folks to be a part of the process and part of politics so that they can get more involved and feel comfortable with their advocacy work and reaching out to their elected officials. It's really important that the person in office is listening to their constituents, not just telling them what's best for them, but actually listening to their concerns and hearing everyone's different perspective. So that's something that I really do want to focus on and prioritize when elected.
Great. Well, the Chandler Chamber, we represent businesses of all sizes, from the one-person shop on up to the larger corporations. So let's talk a little bit about how you will actively protect the interest of the business community, because that's what's creating jobs. And the avenues of communications do you want to have or provide to those local businesses?
Yeah, I think we need to rethink our subsidy programs so that we can better support small business owners and innovative businesses, right? If we care about things like climate change and climate action, we should be looking at our subsidy programs to decide, okay, how can we change that to invest in companies who are prioritizing how they're impacting our climate? Or are they a more circular company and having more of a zero waste type of business? And these are all really important decisions that we have to make on a federal level so we understand how it's actually impacting businesses from all over, right? Regardless of the size. And I think changing our subsidy program is really going to help with that, and it's going to help incentivize businesses to move forward, whether that's incentivize them to invest in higher salaries or benefits. That's something we can do better on, especially when we're looking at large corporations, right? Or whether it's subsidizing programs or investing in small businesses so that they can get ahead. And here in Arizona, we were talking earlier about how hard it is to get through the summers. And when small businesses get started, if they don't make it through that second summer, it's very difficult for them to continue. And so I think we need that perspective in federal government so we can better protect these businesses throughout the year.
Great. So let's talk about what is your plan to make more of a unified political environment and collaborate with others who might not necessarily agree with you?
Yeah, that's fair, especially in today's political climate. The good news is that most of us do agree that we should be working together to come together on legislation and make progress, right? So even if we can't come together on everything, there's always a way to come together. And we've seen that from a federal perspective. We've seen that with Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee coming together for that Yemen bill, right? So we see this play out throughout political history. It's just that in recent years, it's been a little bit more challenging. And I do think that if we elect people into office who truly care about their constituents, who truly want to listen to the voters and want to make progress, then we can actually continue to move forward. What we're seeing right now in the House especially is with people like my opponent, who are holding up legislation to play politics. And in my view, it's time to stop playing politics and start governing. So I am willing to work within my own party, hold my own party accountable, and cross the aisle to work together.
Great, thank you. So fiscal responsibility is a huge issue. How will you maintain fiscal responsibility and actually prioritize allocation of monies at the federal level?
Yeah, that's fair. And we have to look at everything that's impacting our fiscal responsibility, right? So if we are not supporting businesses properly, how is that impacting our economy, right? And so I think this is a really fair concern given the deficit. But what we've also seen is that when we give large tax breaks to corporations, that drives up the deficit instead of actually, playing that trickle-down economics card that is hopefully going to build the middle class. So right now, 60% of the wealth in this country is inherited. And that is challenging for those who have more of a middle-class life and weren't born into money. So we want to make sure that when we're talking about fiscal responsibility, we're actually investing resources where it's going to count to actually strengthen our economy and boost our economy from the ground up.
Great, thank you so much for that. So if you are successful in November, if elected, what will be your number one or number two priority that you want to hit after taking office, that you want to hit the ground running with?
Yeah. So I see a lot of issues as economic issues. And so that's my biggest concern right now is how do some of these things impact our economy? And again, going back to how do we boost families and everyday homes so that we can actually strengthen our economy. And so one of those things that I would prioritize is our healthcare system. We have seen over 500,000 people file bankruptcy because of medical debt. We're the richest country in the world and we spend more per capita and have lesser quality outcomes. We should absolutely be looking at our healthcare system to figure out how we can make it more affordable for everyday folks. So that they don't have to worry if they get sick, how they're going to pay for that, So that is the biggest thing for me is focusing on healthcare right now. Even though we've seen some positive changes through the ACA, we still, again, have a long way to go and we have a lot of work to do.
Great. Well, I know that we've had just a short amount of time and we've kind of been all over on the questions. But is there anything else that I may not have asked you that you feel is important for the voters to know about you? Or is there something that you want to tell them?
I think it's important to understand we need a change in leadership. We need a representation that is going to listen to folks across the political spectrum, who's not out there playing political games, but actually wants to get work done. I really want to prioritize healthcare for people, for everyday families. I want to ensure that our economy is strong. I want to prioritize veterans benefits. That's something that I think is appalling. We don't take better care of our veterans. And the incumbent likes to talk a big talk, but he's not actually passing any legislation to better his constituents. Outside of that, I think we need someone who's willing to halt on the extreme rhetoric and actually focus on facts and having those difficult conversations. So again, we can focus on building those bridges. And on top of that, someone who understands working families, because I do come from a trades background and I understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, to sit up wondering how you're gonna pay a medical bill. And when we don't have that kind of representation in federal government, it really does impact us in our day-to-day lives.
Great, well, thank you so much. Katrina Schaffner, who is running for Congressional District CD5 for the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.